The night was young, a velvet blanket dotted with twinkling stars. The sky was a canvas of serenity, each star a tiny beacon of light in the vast darkness. It was the kind of night that poets write about, where the air is crisp and the world seems to hold its breath in quiet anticipation. A gentle breeze rustled through the trees, their shadows dancing on the pavement below. The leaves whispered secrets to one another, creating a symphony of soft rustling sounds that added to the night's enchantment. The trees stood tall and silent, their branches swaying gently as if waving to the stars above. It seemed like a perfect night for a stroll, the kind that soothes the soul and calms the mind. The streets were quiet, the usual hustle and bustle of the day replaced by a peaceful stillness. The air was cool and refreshing, each breath filling the lungs with a sense of calm and tranquility. But for Sarah, the tranquility was deceptive, a thin veil over a growing unease that gnawed at her insides. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was off, that the night held secrets she was not meant to uncover. Her senses were heightened, every sound amplified, every shadow a potential threat. She quickened her pace, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs. Each step seemed to echo in the silence, a reminder of her vulnerability. The faster she walked, the louder her heartbeat became, a drumbeat of fear that urged her to move faster, to find safety. The streetlights, dim and unreliable, cast long dancing shadows that played tricks on her eyes. The flickering lights created an eerie atmosphere, making the familiar streets seem foreign and menacing. Shadows stretched and twisted, morphing into shapes that seemed to move and breathe with a life of their own. Every rustle of leaves, every creak of a branch, sounded like a whispered threat in the stillness of the night. The sounds that once seemed soothing now felt ominous, each one a reminder of her isolation. The night, once a friend, had turned into a sinister presence, watching her every move. She was alone, utterly alone, and the feeling sent a shiver down her spine. The solitude that once brought peace now felt like a heavy weight, pressing down on her shoulders. She could feel the eyes of the night upon her, an invisible audience to her growing fear. The night had turned sinister, and Sarah could only hope to find her way home before it was too late. Sarah wasn't usually one to be unnerved. She had always been the epitome of calm under pressure, a trait that served her well in her line of work. A journalist by profession, she was used to dealing with the grit and grime of the city, the chaos that came with uncovering the truth. She had faced down corrupt officials, exposed criminal enterprises, and navigated the murky waters of political scandals. The underbelly of society that often hid in plain sight was her beat, her territory. But tonight was different. The city felt more menacing, the shadows darker, the air thicker with an unspoken threat. Tonight, she felt a prickling sensation on the back of her neck, a feeling she couldn't shake off. It was as if invisible eyes were watching her every move, tracking her through the labyrinthine streets. A sixth sense telling her that she wasn't alone. Her instincts, honed by years of investigative work, were screaming at her to be cautious, to stay alert. She had received a cryptic message earlier that day, one that had set her nerves on edge. It wasn't just the words that were unsettling, but the way it was delivered. A warning scrawled on a torn piece of paper slipped under her door in the dead of night. It spoke of secrets, of danger, of things best left undiscovered, of a truth that someone wanted buried. The message was clear. She was getting too close to something that someone was desperate to keep hidden. And it was signed simply with a single chilling word: beware. That one word echoed in her mind, a constant reminder of the peril she was in. Now, as she walked home, every instinct screamed at her to run. The streets that were once familiar now seemed alien, each corner a potential hiding spot for danger. She quickened her pace, her heart pounding in her chest, her breath coming in short, sharp gasps. She knew she had to stay strong, to keep her wits about her. But the fear was real, and it was growing with every step she took. It started subtly, a flicker of movement at the edge of her vision. She dismissed it as a trick of the light, her nerves playing up in the darkness. But then she saw it again, a fleeting glimpse of a figure shrouded in the shadows of a nearby alleyway. It was gone as quickly as it appeared, leaving her with a heart that hammered against her chest. Fear, cold and clammy, tightened its grip around her. She tried to rationalize, to tell herself it was just her imagination running wild. But deep down, a chilling certainty settled in her gut. Someone or something was watching her. The rhythmic thud of footsteps on the pavement behind her shattered the eerie silence. They were soft, almost muffled, but unmistakable in the stillness. Her breath caught in her throat and her steps faltered. She didn't dare turn around, didn't want to confirm the fear that clawed at her sanity. The footsteps continued, measured and relentless, matching her pace stride for stride. Her mind raced, a whirlwind of terrifying possibilities. Who was following her? What did they want? The questions echoed unanswered in the silence of her fear. The footsteps stopped abruptly. The sudden silence was more unnerving than the sound had been. It was a silence pregnant with anticipation, heavy with unspoken threat. She could feel the weight of unseen eyes on her back, watching her every move. She didn't dare slow down, didn't dare turn around. Her only hope was to reach the sanctuary of her apartment building a few blocks ahead. She picked up her pace, her lungs burning, her legs screaming for respite. But the fear lent her an almost superhuman strength, propelling her forward. Panic, raw and primal, surged through her veins as she realized the futility of her efforts. Her pursuer was closer now. She could sense it. The hair on the back of her neck stood on end, a primal warning system screaming at her to flee. She broke into a run, her breath coming in ragged gasps. The pavement flew beneath her feet, a blur of gray and black. But the sound of her own footfalls was drowned out by the relentless thud of pursuit. Closer now, more insistent. She ducked into a narrow alleyway, her lungs burning, her legs on fire. The darkness here was absolute, the air thick with the stench of garbage and despair. She pressed herself against the cold brick wall, her heart pounding a frantic tattoo against her ribs. The alley twisted and turned, a labyrinth of shadows and decay. She had hoped to lose her pursuer in the maze, but it seemed like a futile hope. The footsteps echoed in the narrow passageway, slow, deliberate, getting closer. She was trapped, cornered like an animal. The alley opened into a small dead-end courtyard, its only entrance blocked by the relentless figure that had been hunting her through the night. He stood there, silhouetted against the moonlight, his features obscured by the darkness. He said nothing, but his silence spoke volumes. It was a silence filled with menace, with an unspoken threat that hung heavy in the air. She could feel her own fear, a tangible entity, suffocating her, stealing her breath. "Who are you?" Her voice, a mere whisper, was swallowed by the night. But the figure heard. He took a step closer, and for the first time, the moonlight illuminated his face. It was a face she knew, a face that had haunted her dreams for weeks. The face of a man she had trusted, a man who had sworn to protect her. Betrayal, sharp and cold, cut through her fear. "You?" she breathed, her voice filled with disbelief and dawning horror. "I had no choice, Sarah." His voice was low, laced with a strange mix of regret and urgency. "They were onto you. They know what you know." "Who?" she demanded, her voice regaining its strength, fueled by a potent mix of fear and anger. "Who are they?" He hesitated, his eyes darting around the courtyard as if expecting to see their unseen enemy materialize from the shadows. "It doesn't matter. Not anymore. I have proof. Proof that will expose them all." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small metallic flash drive. The weight of it felt heavier than it should, as if it carried the burden of countless secrets and untold stories. "This is it, Sarah. Everything I've been working on." His voice trembled slightly, betraying the gravity of the situation. This wasn't just any ordinary flash drive. It was the culmination of years of research, sleepless nights, and relentless pursuit of the truth. "It's all here." He took a step toward her, his hand outstretched. The air between them seemed to crackle with tension, the weight of unspoken words hanging heavily. She hesitated for a moment, her eyes searching his face for any sign of deceit. For a moment their eyes met, and in that brief exchange, she saw a flicker of something in his gaze. Was it fear, or was it desperation? The lines between the two emotions blurred, leaving her uncertain and uneasy. Fear? Or was it desperation? She couldn't tell. His eyes, usually so clear and determined, now seemed clouded with a mix of emotions she couldn't quite decipher. It was as if he was silently pleading for her to understand, to trust him, despite the chaos surrounding them. Before she could decipher the emotion, a shot rang out, shattering the night. The sound was deafening, echoing through the empty streets, like a cruel reminder of the danger they were in. Her heart raced, and time seemed to slow down. He crumpled to the ground, a crimson stain blooming on his chest. The sight was surreal, like a scene from a nightmare she couldn't wake up from. She rushed to his side, her hands trembling as she tried to stop the bleeding. Sarah screamed, a sound of pure terror and disbelief. Her mind raced, trying to process the sudden turn of events. How had it come to this? Just moments ago, they were on the brink of a breakthrough, and now everything was falling apart. As she stared at the fallen figure, a new shadow emerged from the darkness behind him, a gun glinting in his hand. The true hunter revealed. The figure moved with a predatory grace, each step calculated and deliberate. Sarah's breath caught in her throat as she realized the full extent of the danger they were in. The night, it seemed, was full of surprises. The once familiar streets now felt alien and hostile, every shadow a potential threat. Sarah knew that this was just the beginning. The flash drive in her hand was more than just data. It was a key to a Pandora's box of secrets that someone was willing to kill for. She had to make a choice, and quickly. The fate of everything they had worked for hung in the balance.